Welcome back to Roots and Relevance, everyone. I'm Tim, and we are back in Esther Chapter 5. The next 2 weeks are going to be big weeks. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 are, it's not where everything happens, but it's where a lot happens. We talked about the chiasm, kind of the U shape or the X shape of the entire book, and the crux is going to be coming up very soon. We're still in Chapter 5 on kind of the dark downturn, and that's gonna change pretty quick. And so yeah, there's a lot to get into. So let's kick off. Riley, if you want to start us off, we'll do verses 1 and 2 and go from there.
All right. Now it came about on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's rooms. And the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room opposite the entrance to the palace. When the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, she obtained favor in his sight. And the king extended to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. So Esther came near and touched the top of the scepter.
All right, we'll kind of start there. Anything jump out to you there?
Do we make anything about the third day?
The group third day? You know,
Yes.
I used to know Mac Powell. Hold on, let me pick up the name I just dropped.
Is that a humble flex or?
Yeah, no, that was not even a humble flex.
Is knowing Mac Powell even a flex anymore?
Ooh.
See, I wouldn't think
I'm
the
sorry,
idea that
Mac,
you're talking about.
I know you're listening.
Have you heard of Third Day?
No.
Really?
No clue what you're talking about.
No, she doesn't have
Man.
anybody.
Stephen Curtis Chapman's going to be at the Grand Ole Opry this month.
I like
Is he?
different.
He was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, actually.
Yes, sir.
And that has so much to do with verse 2.
You brought up third day.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's
Talk to
your
us about-
fault.
Talk to us about the third day.
So should we be making a big deal about the third day? Because it talks about in chapter 4 that after Esther has agreed to go to the king for such a time as this, and she asks that Mordecai get together people and to fast for 3 days and 3 nights.
Right?
Should we make any more of that than just she's wanting them to fast? Or is there some illusion?
Okay, well, what's the significance of 3 days that you're clearly hinting at then?
I'm not hinting
In
at
the
anything.
Bible, overall, as a narrative,
he's
3
doing
three is an important number,
I'm
and you
trying to-
know that.
I'm trying to pull a Jonathan real quick.
No,
You pull those the most often.
What do
I was feeling he's doing the Tucker Carlson where he's like, I've got things to say, but I'm just going to ask the question. I'm not saying, I'm just asking questions here.
Do I get Tucker Carlson money?
I think
No.
I think 3 days is the imaginary fish in Jonah. I think that's the reference.
There you go.
Well, did the 3 days in Jonah mean something?
It's representative of the Trinity.
Oh my goodness. I love what he just did there. Totally subverts.
Are we reading too much into it to have allusions to Christ
Yes.
in the grave for 3 days? Are we reading too much into that?
Yes.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by reading into it, because I think we could always read the story of the redemption, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus into everything, into Superman, into like any movie you see, into passages throughout the entire Bible. Now, like, I don't think this is what you're saying. If you're asking, like, did the writer go, okay, I'm going to do 3 days here because it's going to symbolize, it's going to point to the resurrection. I don't know that I personally would go that far, but I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, like, hey, isn't this interesting? And to kind of show the correlation. That's where I am.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think that it was an intentional aspect of the person writing Esther. And I do believe that 3 days within Scripture are pointing to the reality of the resurrection eventually. Whether it's intentional or not, that they're looking forward and say, hey, we need to put 3 days in here, so we want to point to the resurrection. Right. I think just in God's divine story that he's been creating from the very start of creation, that he is revealing, hey, this 3 day thing, it's going to be important.
Right.
And we see little bits of it here and there throughout the Old Testament that sort of places the importance of what's going to be happening in the New Testament.
All right, let me follow up real quick. So I got you. No pushback. Just then, what comes next then? So what's your take on the next few words, at least in the English? I don't know if it's the Hebrew, but then what do you take if you're thinking that this was kind of a subtle way of showing that the potentiality, the non-annihilation of the Jews will be coming on a future day for spiritual purposes? What's up with her dressing?
Well, look,
Go
so
ahead.
that really is kind of beautiful when you think about it, right? Like going along with that sort of analogy, on the third day in Hebrew, it doesn't say Esther dressed in her royal clothing. It says Esther put on royalty,
Correct.
which I think is really cool.
Yep.
This verse is like, you're almost seeing like the rise and the like transformation of Esther into what going forward is going to be incredibly, I think, heroic figure. You know, even doing, as we talked a little bit about, like previously, almost taking the man's role when it comes to the annulment, doing all those sorts of things, is you're seeing that transformation in this verse. I don't know if there's anything else in there.
Well, so last episode, if I remember correct, everybody agreed with me at the end that this dressing up has something to do with maybe some characterization going on. Do y'all remember how y'all were wrong last week, Wally?
That was like
It's
2
been
weeks
a
ago.
hot second.
No, that was last week. That was last week's podcast.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Anyway, so I think it's important that in 6, Mordecai is going to be dressed, that Haman's going to have him dressed in. And I think in this one, we get Esther, who has put on now royalty. Now, to go to what you were saying, Wally, you know, you could see this in a Christology, I guess, of like, well, this is representative of Christ. After the third day, he resurrects. He's putting on royalty now because he's going to come save us. I see it the completely opposite. I see Esther now putting on the Persian garb of attempting to walk into the Persian court, to the Persian inner sanctum with Persian garb to save the people of Israel.
That's also what the Rabbi David Foreman would say as well,
Oh,
right?
okay. I
Because
didn't read that part.
he makes a point that not only is she Queen Esther, she is, what does he call Queen Persia?
Mother Persia.
Mother Persia. And so in that instance, she literally is trying to embody like Persia as she goes in. Yeah. I think that's interesting.
I'd love to hear
either
y'all's
way.
thoughts on that. Is this right or is this wrong? Did she do the right thing? Did she do the wrong thing? If she actually did anything at all, but at least what the story says about how Esther's acting now when she's going to attempt, after a 3-day fast and sackcloth and mourning.
I mean, what other clothes does she have?
How else is she supposed to
Yeah.
get in front of the king
Right.
if she's not dressed for court?
Okay, so it's a good
Interesting.
point. So then why does the author even bring it up?
Yes.
If that's
Why would?
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, if that's the only thing she had to wear, then why would he even say it?
That's right. I mean, she puts on her clothes because all her clothes should be royal clothes, I would assume.
I think it's
Unless
almost
there's-
like she's dressed for action now. She's the one putting on her clothes. She's going to go before the king and do this really brave thing. And it's like she's ready now. She's doing it herself.
Right. And I think there is a distinction in what she normally wears and this, even by the way, the wording of it, by putting on royalty. I can imagine there being, the clothes that she wears around the house versus like, oh, going into the king, like I now need to represent who I am. I'm the queen. And so she puts on royalty, which I think actually works in both kind of like both directions of what you guys are
I
saying.
mean, Jonathan or any research, I mean, when she would approach the king, would she normally put on all these royal robes anyway if she's going into the presence of the king? Or this is a very unique situation, which
This is going to sound like it could be unique because if her interactions with the king over the last, year have been when he calls her to his bedchamber, right? At night.
With her nightie on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, literally, right? Like I could see her not wearing like royal clothes, in those instances.
Because she's inside the throne room opposite the entrance of the palace. So
which, by the way, that is a lot of detail for Hebrew.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of temple language too, I believe.
Yep. And I know we brought this up before, but it is worth bringing up again that this was incredibly dangerous for her, right? Like this was not a given, especially to a king that seems like a little bit of a impulsive hothead. And so this was, took incredible courage to kind of do what she did. Anything else there before you go to verses 3 through 8? Okay, here it goes. What is it, Queen Esther? The king asked her. Whatever you want, even to half the kingdom, will be given to you. If it pleases the king, Esther replied, may the king and Haman come today to the banquet I have prepared for them. The king said, hurry and get Haman so we can do as Esther has requested. So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. While drinking the wine, the king asked Esther, whatever you ask will be given to you. Whatever you want, even to half the kingdom, will be done. Esther answered, this is my petition and my request. If I have found favor in the eyes of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and perform my request, may the king and Haman come to the banquet I will prepare for them. Tomorrow I will do what the king has asked. All right.
Can I offer a point of translation
Yeah.
on verse 4?
I think I know what you're going to say. Go for it.
In the Hebrew, the word there for him at the very end of verse 4, where you translated it them,
That's why I emphasized it. I'm like, I don't think that's right.
is not the actual translation of that word. It's actually a singular masculine pronoun of him. So the king's like, actually, who are you inviting here? It's not until verse 8, that verse where she says them. And so the second banquet, she's inviting both of them. Clearly, the banquet is for two people that she's inviting. But the first one, it's a singular pronoun that's used.
And the ESV translates the word there for him as king, so that the banquet is for the king.
But that's a pure interpretation.
I mean, if we're looking at this verse in context, what she's doing is pretty dangerous and savvy.
Very Game of Thrones like.
Right? Because the king, if she uses the word him, and she's inviting the king and Haman, who's the banquet for?
And either for the king, either possibility is bad, right? Because if it's for Haman, he's going to be like, what is happening? Why is she
doing a banquet for him?
For him, and I'm there. Something must be going on romantically between them.
Or if it's a banquet for me,
right? Why
is he coming?
Yeah, it should be a private dinner for two. That's like really odd to bring Haman in as well. So like very ambiguous and creates a lot of consternation that I think later is going to lead to a sleepless night. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a great point, and I think that's an important point. I think a lot of people read this and don't catch that Esther may in fact be doing something very subtle, planting a seed of doubt into the king or maybe something.
What doubt I mean, you read Foreman and I've read Foreman over this. What does Foreman say that the doubt that is arising in the king's minds is concerning?
Oh, like that they're romantically involved. Yeah, that they are.
Which is clear deception. So this is what I keep coming back to. So we have, if what you say is true, then you have Esther dressing in Persian garb, coming to the king and using implied deception to get what she wants. True?
I mean, yeah. Is that a lie or is that actually? It's kind of. I would say it's more shrewd than deceptive.
Okay.
Because she's not saying anything.
She might. I mean, is she implying something in this request? Is he inferring something in this request? I don't know. I mean, it is very shrewd. Because I think I think if we sort of follow Foreman's train of thought and argument, is that he's saying that Esther's setting herself up for mutual destruction with Haman, right? We got a king that was willing to banish his wife, one of his wives, or first wife, I don't know what Vashti was, because she refused to come to him when he requested her to come or commanded her to come. What is he going to do to a wife that's allegedly having an affair with his second in command?
Totally.
But also, how do you dislodge a second in command when you're just a woman in the king's palace? I mean, it's very smart. It's very dangerous. And she maybe was actually banking on, I'm going to die, and that's okay. But I'm going to take Haman out with me.
I'm taking Haman with me, right, as I go out.
So let's think about this for a second, because you have to answer the question, like, why a second banquet? And if you take that reason out, like she's stoking kind of the suspicion of romance, then, and tell me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing something, but I think what you're left with is either the option, and I know some people, some Christian, or I think some Christian interpreters, maybe some Jewish as well, will say that Esther was going to do it in the first banquet and kind of lost her nerve and got scared. And so she did like the second banquet. The other option, and this is like the cynical one, is the writer was writing a literary story and wanted to make the chiasm fit. And so, put the second banquet in. I don't know if there's another option. To me, that third option makes sense, that she is, totally playing him along and getting all these emotions stoked up for the big pivot. Thoughts?
Yeah, so let's go back. So let's make sure we're on the same page, Tim. So when you say for the chiasm to work, he used this second banquet. So according to Levinson, who I think this is off of Fox, Michael V. Fox, we're going to get to the chiasm in chapter 6 next week, but the first banquet is the last event that occurs at the alleged chiasm, and the second banquet occurs right after the royal procession of Mordecai. So, if he's using this as a literary element to create the suspense of, hey, y'all, this chiasm's coming when Mordecai is going to get honored, that makes sense to me. I don't know that it's cowardice by Esther, because she just literally walked into her death. And I think if she was cowardice, I don't think she would have ever done that. So that's just my thought. But y'all did skip over that she's using unrighteous acts to effectuate a righteous outcome.
Unrighteous acts. She's not exactly,
yeah.
and she's not actually expressing that that's what's happening. She's just letting it be believed that could be what is happening.
Like, hey, I can't control what comes in your head, right? Like that just, if you all the suspicions just popped up, I can't control. Like, I'm joking, but I guess, Jonathan, my question back to you is she not? Is that sin, or is that just being shrewd?
So, what would Jesus do in this moment? Would he have done the same thing? Did he ever, at any time, insinuate that?
Was he shrewd?
No. I didn't say she wasn't shrewd. I said, would he have done something like this? And y'all are characterizing it as shrewdness. I don't characterize this as shrewdness. I characterize this as an implied deception of an unrighteous relationship to get what she wants and effectuate that. That's what I'm reading from this, not some shrewd comment of like, are you sure Haman's this good guy? I get this as, hey, I'm going to invite this other guy, and it's going to bother him so much, arguably he's not going to be able to sleep all night, which creates the chiasm of Mordecai getting honored.
I guess my question is, Mordecai and Esther chose to be in Persia instead of going back. We have them choosing to hang around the political center of the universe of the Persian Empire. And how are they, for lack of a better term, are they Jews in name only? Are they ethnic Jews without any kind of...
Did you just call them ginos?
I did not. That was something you called.
Oh, okay.
I did not use that term.
Rhino.
Yes,
and
yes.
Sorry.
Is that a possibility? Do they have any kind of Jewish religious affiliation? Mordecai, I think, has an understanding of the scriptures, because we keep seeing him point back to, especially last week when we talked about going back into Exodus chapter... Yeah, the vows and
Numbers 30.
Yeah, Numbers 30. And so he had some knowledge of scriptures and some, but how religiously affiliated to the Jewish nation or Jewish laws is he? I don't know.
Right. And that's a good question. Haman certainly presents that case, as we'll see later on, that they're totally different, and they, I guess he's already done that they're, not following the law of the king and not following the customs. Yeah. And so he's making the claim that there is a distinction there, but he's also has a reason to make that claim, right? So,
and I find it interesting that he uses this term, when Esther comes into the throne room and he says, "What is your request? I'll give you even what to half of my kingdom." Do you know who else says this?
No.
Herod.
Oh, that's right.
At the beheading of John the Baptist, when his wife Herodotus comes in and has her daughter dance for the king, And in Mark chapter 6, verse 23, Herod tells this girl, hey, ask me whatever you want, even up to half my kingdom.
Yeah. I can't remember which commentator, but I know one of them talked about that phrase being a kind of a catch-all phrase that was not like a literal phrase. It'd be like, oh yeah, man, I would give the world to that person. Like, it's not literal. In other words, but it's still the same idea. Like, in other words, I'm going to be over the top generous in my response to you.
But is there any kind of connection? I mean, I see some connection between those two situations. We have Herod, who's a king who has imprisoned John the Baptist, right? We have this beautiful woman, and she's coming in and making this request for an innocent guy to die.
Yeah, that's not a leap at all.
I mean, so here we have very similar kinds of things being played out in the Herod story and also here in Esther.
Yep.
So hyperlink, Wally, that's very good. So I would say that,
But
but that she used her dancing to obtain the head of John the Baptist on a platter.
yes,
Just like Esther is lying and being deceptive to get Haman's head on a platter or on a stake.
Oh, interesting.
So if that's the hyperlink, then it only underscores here, is the author, are we putting happy emojis on what Esther is doing here? Is this really shrewdness, or is this really unrighteous acts to effectuate something? And does she come around in the end to say, I don't need to do it that way? I don't know. And I know we're going to talk about the Joseph link here after a while, but I think it's very important on a relevance point is, do we put on the garb of a political party and go say the words and create deception, untrue deception, to effectuate a political end? Or whether that's in your school, or whether that's in your family. That's what I'm asking here. Is God Yahweh, in the inspiration of this writing, is he saying this is what we should be doing?
I think that interpretation is actually dangerous of what you're saying, because we do see that playing out where people are saying that because the end is just, we're going to forgive all this other unrighteousness and just focus on the ends. And so, yeah, I absolutely do think that. Also, I think we have to resist, Jonathan, what you were bringing up. It's an argument that literally has been happening for centuries between rabbis and theologians. When we come out on it, though, I think the goal should not be to sanitize any of these characters, because, to your point, we see that God often uses actions, like bad actions of so-called heroes, eventually for his glory. And you mentioned the Joseph story. That's actually a great example of some horrible things that happen that God still uses for his good. So I think we can totally see that the secular nature of what Esther is doing, whether we call it sin or not, and see that God is, redeeming that.
Foreman brought out something in verse number 8, and I hadn't really thought of it this way. Is Esther he would say that Esther's caught off guard with the king's response to her request, because it's almost like she's trying to gather a cogent thought.
It's like 3 attempts to if it pleases the king, if the king finds favor, you grant my petition.
Yeah, it's like she's trying to. Okay. I wasn't expecting this, and so she's trying to gather her thoughts together to articulate the request that she's formulating in her mind to request for. I mean, is that off base?
So you don't think it's a pre-planned thing by Esther? You think it was kind of spur of the moment, like, oh.
Well, I believe that she's always intending to ask for this quest, but I think she was sort of caught off guard by the king's response to her standing before him and hey, tell me whatever you want. I'll give you up to half my kingdom. Well, surely she could have just said, wouldn't you think at this point in time when he said that she would have said, hey, they're trying to kill me and my people.
Right. Why not bring that up now?
Why not bring that up now?
Yes. Which it's equal to his most generous proposition to her, right? Later on, he does a version of this, but without the half the kingdom bit.
That's right. When he does it a second time too.
Yeah. But it's the third time is when he takes that part out.
And we'll get to that. That's interesting too.
But Joe, what you're saying, Wally, though, I think that's what you were just alluding to right at the very end. You know, I did not read Foreman. I did listen to a free video that came online.
He pirated it.
No, it was on another website. I did not pirate. And so it did not go to the depth of probably what his book is saying. But, I mean, we're going to see this Joseph, Judah, Benjamin, clash here soon when she goes to the king and asks for the request. And it's almost, according, I think, what Foreman's alluding to, which we haven't got to yet, but it goes to why did she back down now? Why did she wait? We're seeing a transformation, I think, of Esther, of this clash between Judah and Benjamin and honoring one side of her family. We've already talked about, Mordecai saying last week, it's like, well, if you're silent, I know that's the numbers thing, but if you're silent, then you and your family will die. And we get this Benjamin Judah thing that we'll talk about, I'm sure, next week. Is this not just a literary element to frame the chiasm with the honoring of Mordecai, but is this also creating suspense to see the transformation of Esther saying, this is not just about let's just not kill them, let's sell them into slavery, but it's more of we need to save our people, even though they're different than me.
And to make that connection with the Joseph story again, how many times did Joseph have his brothers into his house to eat? Wasn't it twice?
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. I
hadn't thought about that, right?
Yeah.
He asked him the first time, and then gives him back the money bags, and they bring back Benjamin, and they have him back into their house again to feast, and then he puts the cup in Benjamin. But there's that twice.
So many parallels.
There's this feasting that's happening.
That's interesting.
Inside, so I don't know. I just thought about that too.
And Tim Mackey points out that there are 10 banquets in the entire book, which I think is interesting. That like you have the number 10.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and he points out that the banquets are almost always the vehicle in which the story moves like forward. Like it's almost a book of banquets, so to speak. Let's move on to that last section, Wally. If you can read verses 9 through 14.
All right. And Haman went out that day joyful and glad of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he neither rose nor trembled before him, he was filled with wrath against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home and sent and brought his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman recounted to them the splendor of his riches, the number of his sons, all the promotions of which the king had honored him, and how he had advanced him above all the officials and the servants of the king. Then Haman said, even Queen Esther, let no one but me come with the king to the feast that she prepared. And tomorrow I am invited by her together with the king. Yet all this is worth nothing to me, so as long as I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the king's gate. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, let a gallows 50 cubits high be made, and in the morning tell the king to have Mordecai hanged upon it. Then go joyfully with the king to the feast. This idea pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made.
Pride goes before the fall, right? I mean, the amount of pride here is pretty unbelievable. So there's a ton here. What immediately comes up for you as you hear that again?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
75 feet is really tall.
Yeah, like ridiculously tall.
Why is he repeating to Zeresh and all his friends what he's got?
Yeah.
I
mean, he seems like a classic narcissist, right? I mean, like really like
never trust a narcissist.
Everything's about me. Yeah. And like one of the things you know about a narcissist is if they have everything they want, but one thing is missing, what are they going to focus on?
They're focused on the one.
They're focused on the one thing.
Especially when that one thing is perceived disrespect to his person.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not just refusal to bow. This is escalated now. Before it was just a refusal to bow. Now it's like a refusal to bow. And what is the word he used? Like it's kind of this idea that he's showing even more so that like I'm not going to. Oh, there it is. Didn't rise or tremble in fear at his presence. His disposition was probably like standing up and going, "Yep."
That's what Jonathan did when we were growing up. When I walked into the room, he trembled and feared in my presence.
I so believe that. Like
Raleigh, I thought you would be proud of me quoting a Taylor Swift song. Never trust a narcissist.
Very
there
good
you go.
reputation, yeah.
Oh man,
Is that about one of her ex-boyfriends?
Probably.
it's. I mean, do you really?
I
Like
mean, every song is about that. No,
Exactly.
Riley will
No.
argue. Not every song's
Okay,
about an
okay. We're
ex-boyfriend.
talking about Esther here, not
If I-
Taylor Swift.
There's a connection
I think-
between Esther
I
and
think-
Taylor
yeah,
Swift.
I think Esther was saying, if I were the man, I would.
Stop
Man.
it.
All right, that's
Stop it.
That's the last
Jonathan,
one.
our
That's the last one.
reputation is going to be in trouble here.
If they just had an Archer and Archer.
nope.
Have you noticed I've been watching a lot of
what
Taylor
I
Swift
was-
videos?
You
Yeah,
can start singing my favorite Taylor Swift song if you want me to.
No,
Shake
please
it.
don't.
Betty.
Betty.
We
Not
digress.
The original version, but anyway.
Anyway, the reason I was bringing that up is this is actually a form of civil protest that would have been very obvious and very public, because you can imagine as he goes by, every other person around him, I'm picturing like 50 people around him all kneeling, and him just standing up in the middle, like going, what are you going to do?
What's up, dude?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a pretty big form of resistance, what he's doing there.
How miserable must he be to have such animosity to one person? He has everything else in the world except, like you said, he's focusing on the one thing that doesn't treat him the way he thinks he'd be treated, and everything in his life is ruined. He says everything else is worth nothing because Mordecai doesn't bow to me.
Yeah. And that's the way narcissists think, isn't it?
Yeah.
They think unless I have that one thing, and then they get that one thing, and that's not enough either. This guy is clearly, it's ironic in 10, it says, yet Haman controlled himself, because that's the only place he controlled himself. Everywhere else, it's just pure, he's just unrestrained.
Well, and I think.
And
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the chiasm, we're talking about the chiasm here again, and we're about to get to the chiasm in chapter 6 next. But I think this also is like a more focused framing, because I know we have the first and second meeting between Haman and Mordecai, Haman and Esther and the king, but now we also see Haman meeting with his wife before, with the 75-foot tree, and after Mordecai, we see him with the wife saying, "Oh, you're gonna die," with the 75-foot tree in the background.
We'll point next week. We'll point to the center of this chiasm, but you can see where the second appearance of Zeresh is the upswing of the story.
Correct.
Yep.
And isn't it funny though? I mean, we talked about how when he approached the king in chapter 3 about the Jews, he was very particular because he really wanted to kill Mordecai, but he didn't want to look petty.
Right.
So
Which the verse literally says that.
Yeah, so he is making an argument to kill all the Jews in order to get one guy, right?
That's pretty messed up.
And so he's been very, very intentional about guarding his character, guarding his motives, not looking small, but looking
Dignified,
big, large, in charge. But all of a sudden, when he's coming out of this banquet and he sees Mordecai, he throws all that out the window, right? And now it becomes about one person. It becomes about the one person he's been wanting to get at this whole time, right? A descendant of Kish and him a descendant of Agag.
Yeah.
Well-
It's almost, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say something came up in a commentary, and I didn't realize it. That if you go, I wouldn't have mentioned it, but you took us back to chapter 3, and if you look at it very, very carefully, when Haman, I don't know what importance this is, but I do think it comes out later with Esther's plea to him. When you look at what Haman brings before the king, he says, quote, "There is one ethnic group scattered throughout the peoples in every province of your kingdom, keeping themselves separate." He never identifies that it's the
That's
Jewish
right.
people. So
You're right.
the argument is that the king didn't even know, because he actually gives his signet ring over to Haman. And at that point, when the edict is promulgated or drafted, that arguably the king didn't even know that the Jews were going to be killed.
Absolutely.
Well, to that point, I'm getting a little bit ahead of us here, but in chapter 6, the king refers to Mordecai as Mordecai the Jew. Like, that's how he references him. So it's like, when I was reading, I was like, did he just forget that he signed a decree to destroy all the Jews? But if he absolutely doesn't know that the Jews
makes
are
more
actually going to be
sense.
destroyed, it makes sense that he would be like, oh, this is fine.
I think Haman makes this presentation in such a way that says, this people's not really worth your time. Why don't you let me handle it? Almost. And
Yeah.
so,
Give me the auto pin.
So the king gives him his ring and says, "All right, you deal with it." And so he doesn't even know what's happening in
Yep.
his own country.
He's like,
this decoration.
you go do what you
That's
got to
right.
do.
And so he is blind to all this. I think the king is. He
Yeah.
doesn't know who this ethnic group is. Like Jonathan said, he intentionally doesn't mention Jews by name because maybe he does know Mordecai is the king knows Mordecai, the Jew, and those things. So
Very possible. Well, and Wally, to your point, he's been so in control. He's been so like looking dignified. And then this is where it just goes off the rails, right? I mean, think about it. Like Suresh, his wife, hey, maybe you should think about going to build an exaggeratedly tall, like gallows. And then in the morning, I want you to go to the king.
in the morning's a very important
Because
phrase
he
there.
didn't wait until the morning.
That's right.
Right? Because at this point, the narcissist has no more impulse control. Maybe he never did. Well, it looked like he did earlier.
Well, he restrained himself, right? As he's coming out of the party, he said in verse number 10, he said he restrained himself and went home. So he's able publicly to restrain himself, but he gets around people that he knows, he becomes unrestrained and unhooked and unhinged, and we see what's going to happen because of this.
And I just want to make the point, we've talked a lot about how the whole thing is a chiasm that folds in on itself. It makes sense when you just think about the sin of pride. This is kind of the relevance piece for me, because pride kind of works that way, right? You start out and you feel like you're in control, and you're in control of your life, but you continue. It's never enough, and you continue down, and then you start literally pride. But not only does it precede the fall, it becomes the reason that you fall, because you start making decisions that are no longer rational. And I think that's where Haman is right now. He makes decisions that are not rational, that are just purely based out of impulse. I just think that I find that very interesting, the pathway of pride that you see here leading to his destruction.
We see that in political figures. We see that in media stars. We see that pattern in religious leaders. I mean, the Bible speaks to the reality of what happens when you think too much of yourself.
And that's the danger. The modern church puts so much emphasis on the stage and what happens on stage, whether that's the Hillsong-like worship or the charismatic preacher. Who was it that said this? It may have been John Mark Comer said that the problem is we're not meant for the stage. Like, we are literally not meant for the stage, and something horrible happens to us when we get on stage. And it's so true, because then it becomes about us. It becomes about how people are feeding into the ego.
And anybody that knows or has dealt with a narcissist
Never trust a
knows
narcissist.
that if you want a great book, Chuck DeGroat's When Narcissism Comes to Church is a fantastic book. Just finished reading it. I know Jonathan's
right?
read it.
Yep.
You've read it. It is fantastic. What you get on stage is not what you get behind the scenes, behind the curtain.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Which can lead to that sort of double life.
Which is what we're seeing here with Haman, right? In public, he's restrained. He's walking in a dignified manner, carrying himself well. But you get behind the scenes, and he reveals who he truly is.
Totally. And I think that's what chapter 5 is.
If you look at the meta
Yeah.
here, there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, we see the struggle. We brought this out early on in the podcast. Was we see this struggle with the Amalekites, and I just learned this week from reading Genesis that Amalek, is that how you say this? Amalek is actually
Amalek.
Amalek is
Yep.
the grandson of Esau, and so you get this. Now you have this Benjamite from Kish, the son of Kish. So you still see this clash between Jacob and Esau, and then also we're going to also see later this struggle of Esther. I think, at least Foreman argues, I think beautifully, by the way, argues it's Esther coming to terms with her Benjamite background versus what Judah did to Benjamin, to Joseph earlier on.
Yeah.
And so we see the selling. We have Haman already selling the Jews off for destruction. And then we're going to see this language, I think, next chapter, I believe it is, in 6. I know we keep referring to 6. I think we all want to get to 6.
Yep.
But I think it's this struggle internally of Esther of not holding on to her pride, but to give up this hatred and this evil of what has happened in the past, and let's move forward so that we can we all just get along.
And should we make much of Haman said that he'll give what I can't remember talents was of silver, right? Wasn't
Oh, it was like
It
some
was
crazy
so
number.
much.
It was like
Yeah.
it was more than the annual
did-
budget of the entire Persian Empire.
wasn't Joseph sold for so many pieces of silver?
Correct. That's
If
what
I
I'm saying. That was
remember
my.
correct.
That's my. And we'll get to it next chapter. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's exactly right. And you're going to see Esther making that claim. Of if you remember, well, maybe we'll talk about this next week because I don't know what the time is. But we're going to see that Reuben puts him in a pit to save him, Joseph that is. The rest put him in the pit to kill him, and Judah is the one that says we should just sell him and not kill him.
Right.
What good is it going to do? We can get money and we get to save his life. So I think there's a lot going on here, and I don't think it's just that it's a meta to Joseph. To me, it's what is it really saying here to the Jewish people as this story is being written and how they're reading it? Is this really just about how Purim was started, or is this something deeper about the Israelite people and understanding how they should, come together and forgive the past?
And I would say, I don't know if Judah was actually looking to save him as opposed to profit from him. I think that here we can sell him, we get rid of him, and we get money for him. That's a double win.
Bonus.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
frosting on the cake.
It's certainly a story where okay, I'm really going to sound like a nerd here. Any Battlestar Galactica fans?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Do you remember what's the line at the very beginning? All that's happened now has happened before, or it's something like that. And it's a retelling of the story.
What do we say, Rye?
Every story tells the same story.
There's-
Every time we watch a movie, that's said at least one time in our house.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's true.
That's true.
Well, that is a good teaser for next week. Since we the next one better be good, guys. We've talked about chapter six.
better be worth it, baby.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, have a great week, everyone. We will see you next time.